The dim light flickered overhead as Anna sat in a cramped room, her mind buzzing with something she couldn't quite grasp. It had been days, maybe weeks, since the last time she'd felt even remotely normal. But this was different. She wasn't just thinking anymore, she was understanding. For the first time in years, something deep inside her stirred, as if the thick fog that had clouded her thoughts had finally begun to lift. She glanced around the hidden underground facility, one of many scattered across the earth, built by the awakened, and caught sight of others at work. They too were experiencing it, the change. Before, it had been nothing but frustration, confusion, and an overwhelming sense of helplessness. Now there was clarity. The alien mental inhibitors, the ones that had been designed to keep humanity docile, were breaking down, and they weren't entirely sure why. Anna couldn't help but wonder if she was the only one who noticed. Had she been chosen for something? No, it wasn't about being chosen. It was about the potential that was always there. Humans weren't meant to be shackled by mental limitations. They were meant to think, to create, to challenge the impossible. And now, they were waking up to that truth. Anna, you need to see this. A voice snapped her from her thoughts. It was Marcus, another member of the Awakened, and his face was lit with excitement. His eyes were wide, not in fear, but in disbelief. He was holding something in his hand, something small, shiny, and unfamiliar. She could feel the faint tremor of awe in his voice as he spoke. "I cracked it. I finally cracked it," Marcus said, barely able to contain his joy. I repaired an alien circuit board. The interface is functioning perfectly." Anna took the board in his hands, carefully running her fingers across the smooth surface. The technology was alien, undoubtedly, but it felt familiar. There was no mistaking it. The process of repair, the flow of energy through the circuits, was something she understood instinctively now. It was as if the knowledge had been unlocked within her, and with it, a surge of purpose. This is amazing," she whispered. "You're telling me you actually managed to fix their technology?" Marcus nodded, grinning. "I thought it was impossible at first. But then I started to piece things together, slowly, bit by bit. Once I got past the first few glitches, it all started to make sense. The inhibitors can't stop us from understanding this. They only hinder our creativity. But if we keep going, if we share this knowledge..." He let the words trail off, leaving Anna to fill in the blanks. It was happening. They were happening. Slowly but surely, humanity was awakening. "We need to get this out to the others," Anna said, her voice firm now, full of purpose. She couldn't afford to waste any more time. This was the moment. This is only the beginning. Marcus nodded. "We can't just sit on this. We need to show the rest of the world that the chains have broken, that we can still fight." As they began working together, the sense of urgency grew. The other members of the Awakened had begun to feel it too, small sparks of clarity that started to fill in the gaps where once there had been only fog. It was a small thing at first, a few flashes of insight, like broken pieces of a puzzle finally falling into place. But it was enough to give them hope. In the corner of the room, a younger man named Julian had managed to reassemble an ancient human weapon, long abandoned after the aliens had taken over. The thing was crude, rough around the edges, but it was a sign, proof that humans could create again, that they could fight back. Slowly, the scattered individuals that made up the Awakened started to work together, pooling their knowledge, their skills, their passion. This was their first victory. As they shared their discoveries, the floodgates began to open. Anna knew this was only the beginning. The aliens had underestimated humanity for far too long. Now they would learn the truth, that no matter how hard they tried to suppress human spirit and intelligence, it would rise again, stronger and more determined than ever. The hum of quiet conversation filled the underground hideout as Anna and Marcus worked side by side with the others, each task taking on greater urgency. The first step was clear. Now that they understood how to work with alien technology, they needed to push the boundaries further. It wasn't just about repairing, it was about advancing, reclaiming what was once theirs. Anna felt it deep in her bones. She had never been so focused, so driven. The idea that they could be the ones in control again, not just surviving under alien dominance, but thriving, was intoxicating. She wasn't the only one who had changed. The entire network of the Awakened was evolving, and they didn't even fully understand the scope of it yet. The first test came soon after. Marcus and Julian had been working late into the night, constructing a prototype of a communications jammer, something capable of disrupting the alien signals that blanketed their world. It was a bold move, but with the alien network so tightly controlled, it was the only way to truly disrupt their grip on humanity. They had no choice but to take the risk. "We have to try this," Julian said, adjusting the metal parts with shaking hands. "If we can disrupt their communications, even for a few minutes, we might be able to send a message, a signal that can reach the others." Anna wasn't as sure. The aliens had their ways of tracking human movements and devices. The idea of risking exposure was terrifying, but the urgency of their situation was too great to ignore. Humanity's survival depended on it. "Let's do it," she said firmly, her voice betraying none of the doubts that churned inside her. "We need to show them we're more than just their cattle." The prototype was rough, too crude to be truly effective. But Anna and the others had no time to perfect it. It had to work now. As Marcus and Julian set up the jammer, Anna quickly connected to the device, her mind moving faster than it ever had before. Her fingers flew over the interface, her thoughts crystal clear as she manipulated the alien technology with ease. It was an exhilarating feeling. She felt alive in a way she hadn't felt in years, as if every part of her mind, her spirit, her body, was finally awake. The countdown began. 10 seconds. The air was thick with tension. 5 seconds. Everyone held their breath, their gazes fixed on the device, waiting for the signal. This would either succeed or fail, but there was no turning back now. 3, 2, 1. A sudden burst of static ripped through the room as the jammer powered up. Anna's heart skipped a beat. For a moment, nothing happened. But then, the silence cracked open with an unexpected roar of interference. The alien communications network blinked erratically on the screen in front of them. It was working. They were breaking through. "It's working. We're disrupting their signal," Julian shouted, his voice thick with disbelief. Anna couldn't help but smile. It wasn't a victory, not yet, but it was a breakthrough, a moment of defiance. They continued to work, refining the device, pushing it further, learning from each failure and small success. Every time they improved it, they grew more confident in their growing abilities. Humanity was beginning to grasp the alien technology not just as a tool of oppression, but as something they could use to their advantage. They were taking back control, one calculated step at a time. With each new tweak, Anna felt the walls around her, walls of fear, of oppression, begin to crumble. This wasn't just a small rebellion. This was something much larger. The aliens, with all their technology and power, had made one grave mistake. They'd underestimated the resilience of humanity. There was something in humanity that the aliens couldn't replicate or suppress, no matter how hard they tried. That spark, the relentless will to keep moving forward, to fight, to innovate, and to survive, was growing stronger by the hour. "We'll need to test this on a larger scale," Marcus said as he wiped his brow, eyeing the makeshift device. "But it's a start." Anna nodded, her expression determined. "Let's do it. No more waiting. We take the fight to them." As the team prepared for their next move, Anna couldn't help but feel the weight of what was coming. It was no longer just about surviving under alien rule. It was about reclaiming their birthright, the right to think, to innovate, to grow. And with each step forward, they would remind the aliens what it meant to underestimate humanity. The first real victory was small, barely noticeable to the outside world. But to those inside the hidden resistance, it felt like the beginning of something larger. The alien network had been momentarily thrown into disarray, and for the first time in years, the Awakened could sense the power of what they were doing. They were no longer just surviving. They were starting to fight back. But they couldn't afford to sit idle for long. Every minute of delay was a chance for the aliens to retaliate. Anna knew the stakes. Their small underground network had grown stronger, but it was still vulnerable. The aliens had access to overwhelming firepower, and if they detected even the slightest trace of resistance, the retaliation would be swift and brutal. Still, they had no choice but to act. "We need to disrupt more than just their signals," Anna said one evening, her voice cutting through the low hum of the underground hideout. The group had gathered in their dimly lit operations room, crowded around makeshift terminals and tables, filled with blueprints and alien tech. "We need to hit them where it hurts." Marcus looked up from his work, his eyes narrowed. "Their infrastructure, their supply chains. If we cut off their resources, they won't be able to keep their control over us." It was simple, but it was dangerous. Disrupting the aliens' supply chains would be no easy task. It meant infiltrating heavily guarded facilities, where the alien overlords maintained strict surveillance and had their most powerful forces stationed. Yet Anna could see it clearly in her mind. If they could cripple the alien supply network, the invaders would be forced to retreat or, at the very least, become more vulnerable. "We'll start small," Anna said, her tone resolute. "Target their logistics. Disrupt their transportation hubs. Their food and energy supplies. We'll make them bleed, one piece at a time." The plan was set into motion quickly. Using the alien technology they had reverse-engineered, they'd managed to hack into the aliens' communication systems again. This time, they were careful. The slightest mistake could give them away. They began to plant false data, misleading coordinates, fake schedules, and scrambled transmissions to confuse the aliens' patrols and logistics teams. It wasn't much, but it was enough to create chaos in the alien ranks. With every strike, however, the humans learned. They adapted. As their technology improved, they began to modify alien weaponry, repurposing their energy shields and building small but powerful EMP devices. These devices could temporarily disable alien vehicles and patrols, allowing the Awakened to execute hit-and-run tactics, attacking isolated outposts and supply stations without leaving a trace. It was far from perfect, but it was working. In one daring move, a small group led by Julian infiltrated a major alien energy depot. Their mission was simple: plant a series of modified EMPs to knock out the power grid, cutting off a massive portion of the aliens' energy supply. The operation was tense. Every step they took, every movement could be their last. The aliens were everywhere, but the humans moved like shadows, guided by their newfound intelligence. The EMPs were planted with meticulous care, and the team was ready to extract. But as they neared the exit, a low rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. "They've discovered us," Julian whispered, his voice tight with panic. Anna's heart raced as the sound of alien boots echoed down the corridor. They were trapped. The humans had no choice but to fight their way out. The team quickly activated their newly modified weapons, a mix of alien technology and human ingenuity, and opened fire. The energy blasts were quick and precise, taking out a few alien soldiers before they could regroup. But it wasn't enough. More aliens were coming, and they were outnumbered. "Get to the extraction point now," Anna commanded, her voice steady, despite the panic rising in her chest. She and the others fought their way through the facility, evading the alien patrols as best they could. As they neared the exit, Julian was hit. A blast from an alien rifle struck his shoulder, sending him crashing to the floor. Anna's breath caught in her throat, but there was no time to hesitate. Marcus grabbed Julian and dragged him along, shouting for the others to cover him. They'd reached the extraction point, where a makeshift transport vehicle waited, engine already humming. The team piled in, with Anna giving one last glance at the complex as they sped away. Behind them, explosions rang out. The EMPs had done their job. The energy depot was going up in flames, and the alien forces would have no choice but to divert their attention there. As the transport vehicle raced into the night, Anna allowed herself a brief moment of relief. They had done it. The first blow had been struck. Humanity had proven it could fight back. But the battle was far from over. The weeks that followed the attack on the energy depot were a blur of small victories and harrowing losses. The Awakened had become more skilled, more daring, but the stakes were rising with each operation. They had dealt the aliens a significant blow, but at a cost. Julian was recovering. His shoulder wound serious, but not life-threatening. Still, the incident had shaken everyone. It was a harsh reminder that every action carried a price. Anna paced the dimly lit command center, her mind racing. The operation had been a success, but the alien response had been swift. They knew humanity wasn't just hiding anymore. They were fighting back. And the aliens were starting to retaliate with increasing severity. Surveillance was tighter. Patrols were more frequent. The once unseen alien presence on Earth now loomed large, a constant reminder that humanity's rebellion was dangerous, not just for the Awakened, but for every human still under their control. "We need to hit them harder, make them feel it," Marcus said, his voice laced with frustration. His hands were smeared with grease as he worked on another piece of alien equipment, but his eyes never left the monitors. "We can't afford to play it safe anymore. If we keep reacting, they'll corner us." Anna shook her head, her thoughts still on the wounded Julian. "We need to be smart, not reckless," she replied. "We can't forget that there are still people who don't know we exist. We can't risk putting them in the crossfire." But even as she spoke, she knew the truth. The Awakened could not hide forever. They couldn't wait for the right moment. If they didn't act soon, the alien overlords would tighten their grip on the world, and humanity's hope would slip further away. There was a silence as the others absorbed her words. Then, a voice broke through the quiet. "Anna's right." It was Julian, sitting at the far end of the room, his face pale but resolute. His arm was in a sling, but his eyes still burned with the same determination that had kept him alive during the raid. "If we don't keep pushing forward, they'll grind us into the dirt. We can't afford to hide. We have to make them realize we're not going to back down." Marcus nodded. "He's right. We've been operating in the shadows for too long. It's time to take the fight to them. If we can strike at their command centers, take out their leadership, we can cripple their ability to retaliate." Anna sighed, the weight of their choices heavy on her shoulders. The idea of going after the alien leadership was tempting. It was a direct strike at the heart of the enemy. But it was also the most dangerous mission they had ever considered. The aliens weren't just powerful, they were organized, with contingencies for everything. Taking out their leadership would risk everything: the rebellion, the lives of the Awakened, and possibly even the fragile hope that they had built so far. Yet the more she thought about it, the clearer it became. The aliens' leadership was the key. If they could disrupt it, they would create chaos within the ranks. And chaos meant opportunities to gain more ground and rally more people to their cause. "We do it," Anna said, her voice steady despite the uncertainty in her heart. "But we need to hit them hard, fast, and get out before they can retaliate. We can't afford to leave a trail." The plan was simple: strike at one of the alien command centers, a heavily fortified facility located deep within a city now under alien control. The Awakened had been monitoring the base for weeks, learning its patterns, finding weaknesses. It was a risky mission, but they had no choice. They had to act before the aliens got any closer to discovering the full extent of the resistance. As the team prepared for the mission, Anna felt a familiar tension in the air, one that she hadn't experienced in a while. The quiet before the storm. They had done everything they could to prepare, but the odds were still stacked against them. This wasn't just another sabotage. This was the start of a war, and every step from here on would be more dangerous than the last. By the time they left the underground hideout, the weight of their decision hung over them like a thick cloud. The world was about to change, for better or worse. As Anna stared out at the horizon, she couldn't help but feel the first stirrings of fear. But there was something else too, something that had been absent for too long. Hope. No matter what happened next, the resistance had made its mark. The aliens would never see them as weak again. The night was darker than usual, the oppressive weight of the alien presence stretching across the city. The awakened had infiltrated the heart of their enemy's stronghold, and with each step they took, the risk grew exponentially. Anna's team moved in silence, blending with the shadows, their breaths shallow, every sound amplified in the thick air. Tonight, they would strike at the very core of the alien command structure. The mission was simple, at least in theory: disable the alien leadership's communications hub, disrupt their tactical operations, and withdraw before reinforcements could arrive. But simplicity didn't mean ease. The facility was a fortress, heavily guarded, with defenses far more sophisticated than anything the Resistance had encountered before. The aliens had learned from their previous mistakes, and now they had a new weapon. The Sentinels, massive biomechanical guardians designed specifically to hunt down human insurgents. "Everyone stay sharp," Anna whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of distant footsteps. "We don't have much time. Once we're inside, we make sure they don't call for backup." Julian, though still recovering from his injuries, was by her side, his eyes scanning their surroundings. His expression was determined, but Anna could see the hint of doubt beneath his bravado. He wasn't the only one feeling it. The tension in the air was palpable, as if the very ground they walked on could betray them at any moment. Marcus, always the tech expert, was leading the group, his mind already plugged into the alien network. "The central hub is a few hundred meters ahead," he muttered, his fingers dancing across the interface of a handheld device. "We're close, but we've got a few sentinels patrolling the area. We'll need to disable the security grid to get in without triggering an alarm." Anna gave a small nod, her focus sharpening. She could feel the weight of her decision now. This wasn't just about sabotage. They were going after the heart of the alien operation. If they succeeded, they would cripple the invaders' control over Earth. If they failed, they wouldn't be able to escape. They reached the outer perimeter of the facility without incident, the towering walls of the command center looming over them like a dark monolith. Marcus worked quickly, hacking into the security system, his fingers flying over the device as he bypassed firewalls and encryption. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his hands never shook. "I've got it," he said, the relief in his voice barely concealing the underlying tension. "The grid's down. We can move." They crept through the shadows, the silence almost suffocating as they neared the main entrance. Every footstep felt like an eternity. Anna's pulse raced, her eyes flicking to every corner, every shadow. The sentinels could be anywhere, waiting, watching. They had to be fast. They entered the command center with minimal resistance, the quiet hum of alien technology surrounding them. But Anna wasn't fooled. This was the calm before the storm. They had to get to the communications hub and disrupt the flow of information before the aliens could react. As they moved deeper into the facility, Marcus's voice broke through the tense silence. "We're almost there, but the sentinels are closing in. They'll be on us any second." Anna's heart raced, but she forced herself to stay calm. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was about sending a message. Humanity wasn't just going to lie down. They would fight back. The aliens needed to understand that, even if it cost them everything. "Prepare to move," Anna ordered. "Once we get to the hub, we plant the charges and get out. We don't wait around." The group reached the communications center, a vast, glowing network of alien technology. The towering consoles pulsed with energy, their wires extending like veins into the walls. The room was a maze of equipment, but Marcus led them to the heart of it. He quickly set to work, installing the small, specially designed charges that would disable the system. As he worked, Julian kept watch, his eyes darting back and forth, searching for any sign of movement. Anna stood at the entrance, her hand on the pulse rifle at her side, every muscle tense, ready for a fight. The sound of distant footsteps reached her ears. They were running out of time. A sharp click echoed through the room as Marcus finished. "Charges are set," he said. "Now we get out of here. Fast." But as they turned to leave, the ground suddenly shook. The facility's alarms blared to life, sending a wave of panic through the group. The Sentinels had arrived. "Go!" Anna shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We can't stay here." The awakened ran, their movements frantic as they retraced their steps through the facility, the thumping of Sentinel footsteps growing louder behind them. The alien biomechanical creatures were closing in, and they had no choice but to fight their way out. Anna's breath caught in her throat as the first Sentinel appeared at the end of the hall, its glowing eyes fixated on them. The creature was a towering monstrosity, its metal limbs whirring as it advanced. It was relentless, unstoppable. But the awakened had something the aliens didn't: human ingenuity. In that moment, Anna knew they weren't going to give up. Not now. Not ever. The moment the Sentinel appeared, everything shifted into chaos. Its mechanical limbs clanged against the floor, its body gleaming with the eerie glow of its alien core. The Sentinel's eyes locked onto Anna's group, and without hesitation, it lunged forward, its movements swift and brutal. The sound of its footsteps shook the entire hallway, reverberating through the cold walls. Anna's heart pounded in her chest as she raised her pulse rifle, her fingers trembling just slightly despite her training. She'd faced down alien patrols before, but nothing like this. The Sentinel was a force of nature, an unstoppable juggernaut of technology and brute strength. She knew they couldn't outrun it, not with the others still trailing behind her. "Move," Anna shouted, firing a burst at the Sentinel. The shots hit its chest, but they barely made a dent. The creature didn't slow, its armor unscathed by the energy blasts. Behind her, Marcus cursed under his breath. "This is bad, way bad. We can't beat it head-on. We need to move faster." Julian, though wounded, was already scanning their surroundings. "There's a service tunnel to the right. If we can make it there, we can escape." But even as he spoke, the Sentinel advanced, its metallic claws scraping against the floor like a death sentence in motion. Anna turned on her heel, her heart thumping painfully in her chest as she sprinted toward the tunnel. The others followed, but it felt like the Sentinel's glowing eyes were right on their heels, hunting them down with each step they took. "Go, go, go," Anna urged, her voice strained as she pushed forward, her rifle slung over her shoulder. They didn't have much time. If the Sentinel reached them before they could escape, they would be trapped. The sound of its heavy footsteps rang louder as it gained on them. They'd reached the tunnel entrance, but Anna knew this wasn't over. The Sentinel was relentless. They weren't out of danger yet. "Marcus, do something," Anna snapped as she slid into the tunnel, taking cover behind a narrow metal support beam. Her pulse raced. They couldn't afford to be caught. Not now. Marcus, his face a mask of concentration, worked furiously at a panel inside the tunnel, his fingers dancing over the alien interface. "I'm trying, but it's going to take time." A deafening roar filled the hallway behind them as the Sentinel appeared at the tunnel's entrance. Its claws scraped against the walls, sending sparks flying. Anna's heart skipped a beat. The monster was too close. She turned to face it, pulling her pulse rifle back into her hands. "No time," Julian yelled from behind her. "We have to move now." Anna glanced at Marcus. The tension between them was palpable. He was working against the clock. If they didn't stall the Sentinel, they wouldn't get another chance to escape. "Hold it off, just a little longer," Anna shouted, raising her rifle and opening fire again. This time, she aimed at the Sentinel's joints, hoping to slow it down. but the shots bounced off its armor, hardly making a dent. It was only a matter of time before it reached them. The sound of heavy footsteps reverberated again, growing louder and more imminent. Anna knew they were running out of options. The sentinel was upon them. "Marcus," she barked. "Now." With a final flurry of movement, Marcus's hand slammed the interface shut. The security door at the far end of the tunnel slid open just as the sentinel barreled forward, its claws outstretched. "Run," Anna screamed, dashing toward the open door. The others followed in a blur, barely squeezing through the doorway before it slammed shut behind them. For a brief moment, there was silence, an eerie, breathless stillness. The sound of the sentinel's movements outside, the pounding of its claws against the door, echoed in the confined space. But the team didn't stop. They kept moving deeper into the tunnel, as far away from the facility as possible. "It won't hold it for long," Julian panted, glancing back toward the door. "We've got to get to the extraction point before it figures out how to break through." Anna's pulse was still racing, but she forced herself to focus. They had bought themselves some time, but just barely. The sentinel wouldn't give up easily, and the mission wasn't over. The charges Marcus had planted in the communications hub had yet to detonate. "Keep moving," Anna said, her voice tight. "We're not out of this yet. We still have a job to finish." The tunnel wound deeper, a labyrinth of pipes and concrete. It was claustrophobic, and every turn felt like it was leading them further into danger. Yet despite the fear, there was something else, something stronger. The fire of resistance burned within her. They weren't just running from the aliens. They were taking the fight to them, and nothing, not even the sentinels, would stop them. They emerged into a narrow alleyway, their extraction point just ahead. But as Anna glanced over her shoulder, she knew they weren't safe yet. The sentinel was still out there, hunting them, and the war was far from over. The alleyway was narrow and dank, the smell of oil and decay thick in the air. Anna's breath came in ragged gasps as she sprinted toward the extraction point, her heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. The team was right behind her, but every step felt like it could be their last. The sentinel hadn't given up. It was still up there, its eerie mechanical roar echoing in the distance. They reached the extraction point, an old underground garage that had been repurposed into a safe haven. A small rusted transport vehicle awaited them, its engine humming quietly, as if it too were waiting for them to make their move. But as Anna approached the vehicle, she heard the unmistakable sound of sentinel footsteps drawing nearer. "There's no time," Julian shouted, his face twisted in exhaustion. He was clutching his injured arm, but his determination didn't waver. "We've got to move. Now." Anna nodded, but her mind was racing. The sentinel was close, too close. If they didn't get out of there in the next few moments, they would be trapped. She turned to Marcus, who was already inside the vehicle, his hands working quickly at the controls. "Marcus, we need to go. Now." "I'm on it," Marcus grunted, his voice tinged with urgency. He hit a few buttons, and the transport engine roared to life. The sound was deafening, but the vehicle's cloaking device kicked in almost instantly, rendering them invisible to any surveillance systems nearby. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give them a fighting chance. The moment the vehicle's hatch closed, Anna exhaled a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. They were in, but the escape was far from over. The sentinel wasn't the only threat they faced now. The whole alien base was on high alert, and they would have little time before reinforcements swarmed the area. "Hang on," Marcus muttered under his breath, slamming his foot on the accelerator. The transport jerked forward, speeding out of the alleyway with surprising agility. Anna glanced out the window as the familiar streets of the city blurred by in a haze of motion. They were almost free, but she knew that the moment they reached the outskirts, they would need to outrun everything the aliens had. The vehicle bounced over the uneven roads, weaving in and out of abandoned cars and debris. Anna's mind raced, trying to anticipate every possible move. But the truth was, they were flying blind. The aliens could track them at any moment, especially now that they knew they were marked. "Keep it steady, Marcus," Anna said, her voice low but firm. She glanced at the others, their faces tense with worry, but their resolve unshaken. This wasn't just about survival anymore. They had done what they came for. They'd hit the aliens where it hurt, and now they needed to get back to base and make sure the mission didn't end in vain. "I'm trying, but this thing is slow as hell," Marcus grumbled, his fingers dancing across the controls. The transport lurched again as he veered around another obstacle, but the Sentinel was still fresh in their minds. "I don't like the sound of that," Julian said, glancing nervously behind them. "We need to get a clear signal to the others. If they're waiting for us, we won't have time to warn them if the aliens are already on their tail." Anna nodded, pulling up a communication device. "I'll send the signal, but we need to get far enough away before we risk being tracked." The wind whipped against the sides of the vehicle as they tore through the abandoned city streets, moving at breakneck speed toward the outskirts. Anna kept her eyes on the rearview mirrors, her hand hovering near her weapon in case they were ambushed. They didn't get far before the first signs of alien reinforcements appeared. A squadron of sleek alien ships hovering overhead. They were fast, capable of intercepting their escape route within moments. Anna's stomach dropped. There wasn't enough time. The vehicle's cloaking device wouldn't be enough to evade them for long. "Marcus, you need to lose them," she shouted. "Now." Marcus gritted his teeth and slammed the vehicle into a sharp turn, veering off the main road and onto a dirt trail. The transport bounced over rough terrain, but the alien ships were right behind them, closing in with frightening speed. "I'm trying, but they're faster, much faster," Marcus said through clenched teeth. Anna's mind raced. They couldn't outrun them. Not like this. She scanned the area around them, desperate for a solution. Her eyes fell on an old industrial complex up ahead, partially buried under rubble. It wasn't much, but it could provide some cover. "We need to lose them in that old complex ahead," she said quickly. "Take the next turn, hard left." Marcus didn't hesitate. He swerved the transport toward the complex, the vehicle skidding across the dirt. As they neared the entrance, Anna felt the unmistakable buzz of an incoming alien signal, a lock-on warning. They were almost within range. "Brace yourselves," Marcus shouted as he gunned the engine. The transport flew into the complex just as the alien ships fired. A pulse of energy shot past them, narrowly missing the vehicle. Inside the complex, the transport's cloaking system kicked in once again, blending them into the shadows. The alien ships hovered overhead, scanning the area, but they couldn't detect them. The minutes ticked by, tense and silent, as the alien craft searched in vain for their quarry. Anna exhaled sharply, her muscles aching from the strain. They had made it, barely. But as the transport came to a halt, the reality of their situation set in. They had struck a major blow to the aliens' operations, but the war was far from over. They had just made the first move in what was sure to be a long, brutal fight. But one thing was certain: they had proven that humanity would not be erased. They had fought back, and they were still standing. The transport settled in the shadows of the industrial complex, its engine humming softly as the sounds of the alien ships faded into the distance. Anna took a long, steadying breath, her eyes fixed on the dim light outside. They had escaped. They had done what they set out to do. But the weight of their success was heavier than she expected. Every victory came with a cost, and this one felt like no different. Inside the transport, the team was silent. Julian, still clutching his injured arm, was leaning against the wall, his face pale but determined. Marcus, though normally the most talkative, was now absorbed in the controls, his brow furrowed with tension. Anna turned to look at him. "Do we have a way to contact the others?" she asked, her voice steady but carrying the weight of the question. Marcus nodded, a slight flicker of relief in his eyes. I've got a backup system running. We'll send out a signal to the network. They should pick it up in a few minutes." He exhaled sharply, clearly still shaken from the near miss with the alien ships. "But it's going to take some time for the others to mobilize. They'll need to come to us." Anna glanced at the others. "We've bought ourselves a little time then. But we can't afford to sit here for long. The aliens will eventually track us down." The silence that followed was heavy. No one had to say it. Everyone knew the truth. The aliens wouldn't give up, not after the blow they'd just suffered. The command center's destruction was just one small part of their larger strategy, but it was enough to spark a wave of retaliation. They had become a serious threat in the eyes of the invaders. "We'll get the rest of the charges out," Julian said quietly, his voice rough. "We've damaged their leadership, but we need to keep hitting them. If we wait too long, they'll adapt." Anna nodded in agreement. "We'll push harder this time. We've proven we can fight back, and that's going to rally more people to our cause. This is just the beginning." There was a pause. Then Marcus, who had been staring at his console, looked up. "You're right, but we need to make sure we're ready for the retaliation. The aliens are going to respond, and they won't be as lenient next time." Anna glanced out the transport's window, watching the distant city lights flicker in the distance. It was hard to shake the feeling that they were still being hunted, that the shadows outside were just waiting for the moment when they would strike again. The silence lingered for a moment before Julian spoke again, his voice heavy with determination. "We've taken out their communications. Their chains of command are fractured. But we'll need to find their other strongholds if we want to really cripple them." Anna turned to face him, the full weight of what he was suggesting sinking in. "You're talking about targeting their supply lines. Their energy sources. That's a bigger gamble than we've ever taken." "I know," Julian said. "But if we don't, we'll be on the defensive forever. We have to keep pushing." Anna thought about it for a moment, her mind running through the plan. The aliens were methodical, cold, and efficient, and she knew they wouldn't sit idly by while the awakened grew stronger. A retaliatory strike could wipe them out in an instant if they weren't careful. "Okay," Anna said, breaking the silence. "We go for their supply hubs. We'll hit them where it hurts, but we do it carefully. No unnecessary risks. We need to make sure every strike counts." The others nodded, each of them fully aware of what that meant. They were taking on a force far stronger than they were. Each mission would require a delicate balance of aggression and caution. "We'll prepare for extraction," Marcus said, tapping a few commands into his console. "The second we hit the next target, we move fast. No hesitation." Anna gave a small nod of approval. This was the kind of precision they needed if they were going to win. But the weight of what lay ahead hung heavy on her heart. The awakened were few, and their enemies many. Every strike they made was a calculated risk. Every loss was a reminder of just how fragile their cause was. Despite all that, Anna knew one thing: they had sparked something bigger than just a rebellion. They had shown humanity that it was possible to resist, to fight back against an enemy that seemed invincible. The awakened weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for the future of their world. As the transport's engine hummed to life again, Anna glanced at her team, their faces set with a grim resolve. They were in this together, and they weren't going to stop until they'd taken back what was rightfully theirs. The journey ahead would be fraught with danger, but one thing was certain: humanity's resilience had been awakened, and the alien invaders had made a grave mistake in underestimating the will of the human spirit.